Hi gang, how's everybody doing? Yeah, I just throwing out another video there. Yeah, I know some of my posts there with the EVs and all that jazz. Yeah, it's a good idea. It's just we don't have the technology to store the energy. I said that in my very first video I posted on Facebook. Yeah, it's just and to manufacture those vehicles too. Yeah, you might save on carbon emissions because you have no tailpipe ones while you're operating the vehicle, but where you're getting that energy from and the production to make all of that, to make those rare earth motor magnets, like they're electric motors, tons of copper winding, they're super heavy, the batteries are super heavy, the power to weight, so they cut down on the body to be able to lighten the weight, and yeah, they accelerate on demand, but it's the runtime. Like, you get very little time on the things, it's not refined, and they're pushing them to market, and yeah, you might not have tailpipe emissions, but for the amount of emissions to create all of that stuff that you need electronically, yeah, it is what it is. Like, it's a bigger polluter than a gas engine, like a petrol engine. I did Ontario Drive Clean, like I said earlier. So I pulled it back out. Ontario Drive Clean. I did that. I did it for a year, and I went. I did the course. I just test well. So I sat through the training course, and it was in the morning for the inspector, and then the repair was in the afternoon. But I sat through the repair because they told me I could. So I sat through it, and I learned how they repair. And I didn't agree with it because it was backwards. Instead of doing plugs and wires, you change a EGR valve or something that wouldn't even fix the problem. But if you hit a certain amount of money, say it was $700 or $600, $700, then you didn't have to pass emissions as long as you put that money changing parts that you didn't need that never rectified the situation. But they let you back out onto the road. So it was backwards. I only failed one car. It was a 94 Cobra R Mustang, supercharged, full race build on avgas. I knew as soon as I walked to the car, I smelt the fuel in it, fired it up, pushed in the clutch whenever I just moved it through the parking lot, and the car just flaxed, like it made power. It had no reason being on the street. So I dynoed it anyways on the drive clean, and it's the only one I failed. Every other car I passed. I managed to pass, and a lot of them I snuck by. I'm not going to lie, but the system was flawed. The results were right because it was right there on the computer. Hook up all the probes. I had a 94 Tercel come in, and a 94, and this was like mid 2000s, and I brought it back, and it kind of had a bit of an ignition kind of stutter in it, and I knew it, but I ran it anyways because I got 2 shots on the machine. So it failed, and it was a distributor cap and rotor. So I went out and I grabbed a wrench, and all I did to get it to pass, because it failed the first time, I cracked the adjuster bolt on the distributor. I tuned it, like, without a timing light. I just sat there and I listened to it, and I set idle. I locked it down. I ran it. The car passed flying colors. And then, like, later on that day, I was doing brand new Toyotas, and we did all makes and models, and the new cars were barely failing after being on the road for 3 years, barely passing. Like, they were almost a fail. I think that's why they got rid of it. But the tunes went right south after around 2000. I haven't seen a spark plug that was stoichiometric, like with a brown, nice marshmallow colored burn, which is a good burn in the cylinder. I haven't seen that in a car since like 2000. And change plugs all the time. I was a mechanic, fix this, fix that, cause and effect. But yeah, I've never failed a car except for that Cobra R Mustang, which, like I say, it was a pure drag car. The thing was crazy to test drive when I warmed it up out on the street. Like, it should not have been on the street. It was a drag car. Like, it was wild. But he tried to bring it back to get somebody mixed fuel to make it so it would pass, and still didn't pass. But that 94, like I say, and it was something so simple, I did it for free. They would have spent their max amount because the last thing was plugs and wires, and they're all date stamped, and it was a 94 car. It had the original plugs that from Toyota, and they were date stamped 1994, and I still got that car to pass. But it's understanding the system, and it was such a flawed system. But the machine didn't lie, because I would sit there and I'd watch it, and you can see how it picks up and where you could get it, where it would fall in to pull the passing grade, and where it would fall out. So it depended on how you operate it. I like going down to the 2-stage idle instead of running them on the dyno. If it failed on the dyno, I'd 2-stage idle it, and I'd make it pass because I could see it actually computing its fuel map in it. And the fuel maps in new cars are brutal across the board. They're brutal. But I'll show you exactly and kind of try to explain why they do it the way that they do it. So this is an engine. This is a piston, crank, intake, exhaust. So here's your Cadillac converter. Like I said earlier, air fuel sensors is this one. So it's pre-cat. This one is O2 to make sure the cat's working. This is your injector, spark plug. This is either a MAP sensor, manifold absolute, or a mass airflow. Either way they work, or some of them run two, depending on the make and model of the vehicle. But what happens is this is your air intake. So you get air in here, say 14, right? It comes by, engine opens up, valve opens, piston goes down, it pulls air. So we're pulling air into the cylinder as it's going down. Now, it calculates off of this sensor, this is your fuel injector, how much fuel. So it was 14 to 1, 14.7 to 1, somewhere around there, stoichiometric. So 14 air molecules to 1 fuel. So you get a little shot of fuel, you get a lot more air. Down the piston goes, closes the valve, comes back up. Hopefully you have 14 to 1 here. All said and done, because that's what they're aiming for, but they don't. They program them in rich, and I'll explain why in a second here. Right? So 14 to 1, say, all of a sudden you get fire, burns, pushes the piston down. Well, you still have some of these blue, which is oxygen, right? Which is hot now, but they will keep a couple of these. So we burnt this one and this one. Say we left this one in here. Unburnt fuel, which is hydrocarbon. So exhaust valve opens, everything runs down here, gets picked up here to read this is a reference after it comes into closed loop from the computer to make sure that it's right on this end. This is just to reference it. If this fails, it goes back to base map because this is only as smart as the programmer that programmed it. And it's made to see only certain things, it doesn't see at all. So if it doesn't see this sensor working and there's a check engine light, it will go back to its base map and then it will dump fuel into it because it has no reference point. But if it's working, it will read a reference point and it wants to see that one dot in there, a hydrocarbon. It's rich here because it's not burning stoichiometric because we're dumping out raw fuel into the exhaust system. Now the way a cat works is because they're made out of like platinum. So what it needs is it needs to get hot. So what they do is they put hydrocarbons down into it to ignite a secondary ignition. And then you have your air and exhaust and a bunch of carbons and everything that's left over from your combustion. Now it relights this and it takes all of your carbons, your hydrocarbons, right out of the equation, burns them off super hot, but it needs the fuel to reignite to get that hot that it can do it. It pushes your hydrocarbons right down. Only downside is you come across and your NOx goes through the roof, NOx, which is nitrous oxide, which is also laughing gas. So that's what you emit through your tailpipe. And then this is your O2 sensor and it picks up just to verify that it's picking up more of this and less of that. Now, why you wouldn't just burn stoichiometric 14.7 to 1 here, have a perfect burn here, not have to worry about carrying it through, and you wouldn't have the hydrocarbons. You'd be, old school vehicles, they used to do it and it was off of a carb. The reason why carbs, because they gum up, people could tune them, so people would get in there, play around, richen them out, and they'd be dumping fuel. But a computer does the same thing, like they legit dump fuel on purpose to reignite and do a secondary burn, which turns it into an incinerator, right? The only thing is at your tailpipe, listen, we're all carbon beings, plants, animals, every living thing on this planet that's alive, every absolute one of them is carbon-based life form. We need carbon to survive, and we keep taking all of this carbon. Like, the trees whenever they catch on fire. If you looked at my post about the fires last year, where if you look at the sun or the moon, it was like a orangey brown. That was it burning stoichiometric. That's good carbon, reusable, right? If you flash it right down and char it, all you got is charcoal. Like, it's just charred. Like, it's just black. It's soot. There's nothing in it that's any use anymore. Hydrocarbons are bad too because they're liquid form, right? Yeah, so it's one of those things. It's the way that they set it up. Like, I tested so many cars. I get, oh man, I see so much. And turbo cars are brutal. Everybody thinks that they're better on fuel. No, what they are is they're better on volumetric efficiency. So when you got good volumetric efficiency, what you do, the plus side is, instead of just air from atmosphere coming in, you are forcing it in. So via a supercharger, a turbo on the exhaust. But anyways, you're pressurizing this. So say we're running 13 PSI extra above atmosphere. So that's this much more air. Well, now all of a sudden, to keep it stoichiometric, you need this much more fuel at the injector to keep it stoichiometric in your cylinder. Now, the pros are that you can boost efficiency above 100%, according to engine math, if you know how to do engine math. Where the average naturally aspirated engine without a supercharger or a turbo is what it is, right? Like, it's just as much as it can pull in according to the flow characteristics of the engine, the size of the port. There's so many variables, it's endless. But you add all this extra air in there under boost. You have the same volume. Well, you're burning more fuel because you pumped in extra air, so you need it to keep it stoichiometric. The downside is longevity on the engine, because the naturally aspirated engine will take so much pressure, but if you're adding that pressure wears on all of this. Your piston, ring lands, your head gaskets, your valves, your rod, your bearings. It puts extra load, so you end up losing life out of an engine because everything's under pressure, legit, PSI, above atmospheric. So they have their pros, they have their cons, right? Like, yeah, it's nice to have a turbo because you have the power, but they're no more fuel efficient. Perfect case in point. You take a 2-liter engine, naturally aspirated, 14-1. Now you add boost to it, you're putting out the same horsepower, consuming the same amount of air inside the cylinder that you need for your combustion, but you have it crammed in there at a larger volume of air, which pressurizes everything, which basically turns your 2-liter engine into a 2.5. You might as well just run a 2.5 liter. You'll burn the same amount of fuel, and you'll get longer life out of the 2.5 naturally aspirated instead of your 2-liter turbo. I guarantee it. It's the way it works. I've spun wrenches on them for too long. I've seen it all, and it is what it is. A turbo they are no better on fuel. The older ones are better because they don't have the twin spool ones, or scroll they call them, where like it comes on early and then it comes on later off of a single turbo. On my Subaru, like, it's an older turbo, and I want to show you the fuel mileage out of this. So it's an older turbo, so I have turbo lag, but I can basically put it in a lab because it doesn't matter then elevation, barometric pressure, all of this. I can put it on boost, but you got to know how to work a turbo and understand how the system works, and you can make it work. I did a video on it about shifting and saying the same thing. I'll try to post it for you, but this is with towing my kit, you know what I mean? Trailer, bike. I had it fully loaded of race gear, fuel tanks in the back and everything. And this is also the kilometers I drove on my trip to out east. I'm at 8.6 liters per 100 kilometers. That's over a span. It says average over trip A. Trip A is at 7,400 kilometers. And this has no tune in it. It's 100% factory, no cob, none of that stuff. No tuner, it's factory setup. and I pull that out of a car that's rated for, I'll even put the posted, like the claimed rating, which is under ideal conditions is how they do it. So what they do is they put it in a lab, flat surface, ideal temperatures for everything to put your posted fuel economy down. And that's what they go off under ideal conditions. And it's something like 11 highway. And I'm pulling 8-6 city highway. I stopped in every major city, drove the Cabot Trail. Yeah, Halifax, all the way through Quebec City, Montreal, Ottawa, toward all the cities. I was everywhere, man. And highway not, plus going to the racetrack, about 3 hours, 240, 3 hours, and it's Canadian Shield here, so the elevation changes. And yeah, and I still pull that mileage on average over 7,000 kilometers. Now, talking to a guy at the dealer, I just chatted him up because he's got a Subaru too. It's not an STI, it's a WRX, but they're very similar. It's a turbo car too, all-wheel drive. And he was telling me that he gets 8.6. He doesn't make the same horsepower, and he has a Cobb tuner in it. Now, what a tuner does is it tricks your ECM. So instead of it seeing this from the sensor, it's in between a piggyback, and it will tell it a different number, give it a faulty reading to clean up the fuel map as it's going on the fly, which is a good thing. Like, I think some of the tuners are good, but I don't care for the piggyback tuners, just for the simple reason is there's a delay in them, because all you're doing is you're tricking, you're lying to the computer what the sensor's actually seeing, and it's got a computer on the fly, and it takes a second to compute. Doing race cars and stuff, I've done race cars, and you put them on a dyno and you tune right onto the computer. You don't play with the piggyback. You go right to the source. You don't play around there. You want it to run at top horsepower because you're in racing. And on the dynos too, especially drag cars, like, I've been there with like dyno cars and actually throw in tunes, and it's a rarity to find people that can do it good, because to be able to do it across the board, you have to know what you're doing across the entire power band, and that's where the dyno comes in. But then also real world tuning is a big thing too, because it's actually out in the field. Like, the real world is not perfect. It's a variable, like, it's constantly changing. Temperatures, barometric pressure, like humidity levels, all of this are factors. Like, it's all factors, elevation, and it's constantly changing, like from day to day, from minute to minute. And the computer only sees what they program into it for to see, and they're restricting them so bad. That's why I get such good fuel on this, because I distributor cap and rotor, so I have spark plugs and wires and a distributor that I can set. The computer doesn't tell it what to do. I can set it because it's a fixed system. It does the fuel map in it, right? But it's still factory tuned. I just understand how to put factory tunes into the happy spot so that they run in a spot where I'm not burning that much in the way of fuel. Because in all reality, like, it's so simple. The less fuel you burn, obviously the less emissions you emit. So why are we turbocharging all these engines to cut down on engine life and trying to think that it's better, right? It's like electric vehicles. I'm sorry, but we are not there yet. We cannot store energy in a battery. Oh, I feel energy. Trust me. Like, oh yeah. But then again, it's my thing, right? Like, yeah, these tuning rods into me. So it's funny because I got piston, I got engines. I love building engines, man. I love doing the math, and I love flowing them out and getting them dialed in, right? Like, give me a set of carbs on a sled and I'm set. Give me a piston. So I run forged pistons. These are piston rings, right? I didn't change them in the Integra because after I overheated it that one time, why fix something that's not broken? I have a set in the basement on standby, so whenever I want to refresh this engine, when it gets to the point it needs it, I start consuming oil, I'll throw a set of rings into it, but right now, it's got no issues. I heat cycled it down right. But the difference between this and us, right? These are made up of molecules. Atoms make up molecules. It's forged aluminum, right? So whatever it is on the periodic table, well, we're made up of atoms too, but we're made up of cells, and we're changing out our cells all the time. That's the big difference between us. It is, because this cannot regenerate. This doesn't regenerate. This wears over time. It slowly takes whatever it sheds off through the wear and friction, it's gone. It's not going back in to become a part of itself again. Where with a cell, we're changing them out, we get rid of them, but we reproduce new ones. Like sustainability, my friend, like I don't know, all my stuff, like I say with the paperwork, right? Everything looks good on paper. So there's my motorcycle one. I have my automotive one. I have a pile. I have my drive clean. I have my Suzuki Masters, Cat Masters, Ferrari Cat. I got a Yamaha stuff. I did a bunch of Bombi, Toyota. Oh, man. But it's just paper. It's the actual applying it and understanding it to put it into the real world. Now, my fuel mileage on the car, like that should be impossible according to standards because they do that in a lab and I embarrass them out in the real world on the street towing a trailer. You know what I mean? And they're doing it in a lab and they can't get the fuel mileage I can pull out of it by actually operating it. Like, man, it's my life. Like right from my first breath. All I know and all I can say is I just know how to do the impossible. Like my first breath was impossible, breaking my back, severing spinal cord, like going to the racetrack. My legs were a little stiff, but it was just like skating for the first time after a year not doing it. Yeah, same kind of thing. As a matter of fact, my hand was friggin' sore because target asphyxiation, right? So look where you want to go. So breaking into the apex, 2 fingers on the binders, 2 fingers to roll the throttle to blurp it on downshifts, and then palm of the hand and my pinky on the end of the bar to turn in and do this all at the same time at speed. And stuff comes at you. So you look at your break-in point, you look at your apex, you get on the binders, you're looking at your apex where you want to catch the curbing and hang over it. And then next thing you know, you're looking up and you're looking at your exit and you're back on the throttle. And that's how you keep pace. Like, yeah, I'll post a couple pictures there and you'll see where I'm looking. But with target asphyxiation, that's a big thing with life too. Like, don't listen to me. Don't listen to anybody else. Learn to listen to yourself. I am a master at that. Like, I'm good at that. That's what I do. That's why I can do what I can do. Because I'm not listening to people telling me that, oh, you shouldn't be able to do that. I've been told that my whole life. Like, yeah, when I was younger, working, I was working like as an apprentice. And these were my toys as a kid. So this was before my apprentice. These were my toys as a kid. Cutoffs. I grew up. Poured foundation walls, sand floor, airtight wood stove in winter. No water, no heat. That's how I grew up. Like, I'm fortunate. Like, I grew up that way and I always had fun. You know what I mean? Give me a couple of these cutoffs and I build a boat or whatever. I just always have fun. I always look on the bright side. And I find that's one thing a lot of people don't. Like, I grew up through this. Like, the economy, whenever I was 22, I just got the car. And then insurance, rent. Oh, man, food. Being a diabetic, $300 a month in medical supplies every 3rd month was $500 out of my pocket because after 18 I wasn't on my dad's benefits through his work and I never had benefits, so I was paying for that plus everything else, food, and not only that, tools. I have over 100 friggin' thousand K worth of tools invested and I managed to do this, and then every time I get ahead, next thing you know, minimum wage would bump up. So I'd be making $2 more than minimum wage. I could have went and flipped burgers. Think about the spatula I could have had. It would have been gold plated bad. Mind you, I do love to cook and nothing against people that are doing that. Like, I scooped ice cream and pumped gas. Like, that was my first job. You gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta start somewhere and then focus on where you want to go. Like I said, with the target asphyxiation, like, look at where you want to go and you'll go there. If you look at the negative, which so many people do, I hear it all the time. I got friends and with injuries and, oh, my summer's going to be ruined, I have to go in for surgery. I'm like, don't think that way. Think about how much better you will be next year instead of being in the pain you are now before your surgery. You don't know till you get there and do it, but don't look at it like in a negative way. It's like another friend of mine that severed some nerve and it's only going to be a former shadow of itself. Man, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what to say. Like, never give up hope, but stay positive. It's about being positively charged. There's so much good energy. I feel so good outside. I watch the sun come up in the morning, go down in the evening. I listen to the birds. You can hear them right now. They're out there just chirping away, right? Like, yeah, enjoy life and don't take stuff for granted. Like, I'm so joyful I can even get out of bed. take a shower. Like, I don't fight myself anymore. I just come to understand it, and I'm so good at understanding. Pandora's box, once you understand yourself, look out. Like, there's nothing to hold you back unless you allow somebody else to. And other than that, like, yeah, there are energies around, and oh yeah, if you were aware of some of the energies, there's everything transmits it. So an engine, as soon as this moves, it transmits the frequency and energy. Perfect case in point, you get a bad wheel bearing. You're driving down the road, it's growling at you. You sprain your ankle. Kind of same thing. It growls at you, telling you, listen. Are you listening? Listen, right? Perfect case in point. I just relate everything because it's all the same system. It's all connected. Yeah, the energies around us, and I'm well aware too. There's some negative energies, but I don't know what they are. I'm telling you, like, there's some bad stuff out there. But whenever I get a feeling of that bad energy coming around, and yeah, like it just, I outshine it because I'm not scared of it. You gotta be fearless. Like, yeah, I've never been bit by a dog, ridden horses, donkeys, sheep, all without saddles and reins. And I'll say the sheep one here, like bareback, because I know people are going to say something about this. Well, when I was down south, the national radio came through, and I got invited by the receptionist, a bunch of her girlfriends, so they needed me on the team. So they asked if I go. I supported the other dealer brand, you know what I mean? But hey, it was all in good fun. So we went there and we were doing stuff and we had competition. Well, the last one was sheep in the bullpen. And only one person per team, and I was the only guy on the team, so I got selected on my team. Well, these Southern farm boys throwing hay bales and stuff, like linebackers, man, are out there, and they're diving at these sheep, and nobody could catch them, and we take turns. So it got to my turn, I got called, and I'm looking and watching, and I'm like, holy freak, man, like, the sheep are fast. So I'm a small guy, so I kind of put them into the side, you know, and then they were all in a big herd, and then they started going, and all I did was I put my hand on one of them, and it stopped dead. And it looped around and went in between my legs, and I kind of looked down at it. I didn't jump on it or anything. I was calm. I approached it. You know what I mean? I gave it a pet behind the ear, and it shakes his head, and I'm like, okay, like, so I literally went down, I sat on the thing, and it paraded me around the bullpen in a perfect circle, stopped right where I first touched it. I stood up off of it, it went back into the herd, calm as a cucumber, got a standing ovation from the crowd. I took a bow. I remember that. It's just animals, man. They're the best vibes going because they don't know how to be anything but themselves. And if you respect them, like, I got nothing but respect for Mother Nature. That's why I used to always change vehicles, like sensors and stuff, if I had them for free, because it saved the friggin' planet, man. Like, if you go out there and you got a check engine light on and it's not reading, goes back to a base map, it's puking fuel out the tailpipe. So many vehicles, even drag, like draggy brakes, I'd fix them for free. I'd be under the vehicle, do a quick check, set tire pressures. Tire pressures are another big thing. Rolling resistance, it's all in the door jam. It tells you suggested, but use it as a suggestion because it depends on the load, depends on the time of year. So don't just go by that, but use that as a base point. Then all you do is you take a quarter, go across all your treads, and if they're all the same, they're right. If you're low in the middle, like you put your finger down and your finger doesn't touch because you wore more in the middle, it's because you have too much. Let a little bit of the pressure out, let it come out to the sides, and just do half a pound at a time. That's all it takes. But once you get it set for your tires, check them once a month and you're good to go. It doesn't cost you anything. Like, yeah, you maybe whatever to fill it up if you need it, but if you don't need it, to let it out, you just take off your valve stem cap and you just push in with your quarter and it will let the air out. Check it again, put a gauge on it, reference it, drive for a while, check it in a couple of days or a couple of months, and yeah, keep an eye on it. It will save you a pile of money in fuel. That's another thing I'm big on with my car. That's one of the reasons why I get such good fuel economy. I take care of the tires, I take care of the rolling resistance, I fix stuff as it needs and keep it mechanically sound. Like, yeah. And life's simple. Treat others how you want to be treated. Like, that's a big thing I do. I'm all about that. So I'm just trying to share a little info with people to maybe save you a couple pennies on the fuel tank and have to stop. Because, yeah, fuel's expensive and it keeps going up. So if you can burn less fuel by set your tire pressures. biggest thing that's overlooked right off the bat. Most people are running too little, fuel mileage goes up, like you're burning more per mile because it's flexing and it's rolling resistance. You're not flat across the board. Hopefully it helps somebody. Hopefully any of this helps somebody. Like, yeah, there's not much that somebody can tell me. It's like the people that approach me. Lately, it's been a lot with Ukraine. So it was a Canadian Forces guy, 24 years old. I was in Pembroke one day. Next thing you know, he's walking his dog, comes into a friend's backyard. We chit chat for a couple hours. Yeah, he told me a lot of stuff that they don't tell you on the news. Then I was just in Ottawa a couple weeks ago. 2 Ukrainian lads, pushing 30, maybe just early 30s, I'd say. Oh, we had a good chat. And yeah, the rest of their family's over there, but it takes two to fight, and it's the leadership over there. The leaders don't care about the peasants. You know what I mean? But that's across the board. That's everywhere. Like, they don't really care about the low people. Like, they say they do, but it's all the profit margins. It's just whoever's got the money to line their pockets, that's the way that they sway. Yeah, we're so fixated on paper. Like, this is just a piece of paper. That means absolutely nothing to me. I can put that on the wall. No, that certifies through people that, oh yeah, he passed his test. No, my certification is actually on the road, in the stuff I drive, and how it still runs after the amount of miles I can put on it and life I get out of them for dirt cheap and repairs. Because I don't just replace parts, I only replace what's needed when it's needed. I wish more of the world would do that, right? Like, yeah, we're so disposable, but I don't live disposable. I'm like literally the epitome of friggin' sustainability. First TV I still own. Oh yeah, I could go on and on, but I'm going to cut her there. We'll see if they let me post this because Goebbels there, I tell you, propaganda minister there. Oh yeah, they got control over everything. So be a free thinker and do what's right for you and learn to listen to yourself because you have all the answers for you and your circumstances. My circumstances are so unique. And the answers are all right inside. I have everything I need. I could take this all away. This is just material stuff. This means nothing to me. It just lets me be in society so I can go grocery shopping, I can go to work, I can do this, I can do that. That's all that is to me. Like, I don't need any of it because, hey, if I don't need to work, I don't have to because I put myself in a position. It's like I was sat in the hospital bed. It's your choice. Well, I made my choice on the hospital bed, but I've been making my choice all the way through my life. And in all reality, I don't have to work because I got an insurance buyout. My break was catastrophic. They wrote me off without even blinking an eye. My file says it all. I should not be out of bed. I should not even be able to get in a wheelchair. They were hopeful to see me in a power wheelchair with my injury. And yeah, just over 4 years later, you know what I mean? Like, the only thing to limit one is oneself. So don't limit yourself. And don't dismiss stuff. Actually put in the time to understand and process it and don't dismiss it. Just, oh, you know what I mean? And turn a blind eye to it because you got to keep an eye on both sides of it. Like, you need rain and you need sun for anything to grow. Right? Dark, light, you name it. It's all the same. All the same. So you need both. Understand that. Don't just focus on this and be upset whenever this happens. That's not how to live life. It's about understanding this. What can you do to change it to put yourself here? That's your choice. Nobody else's. And if you made a choice to go over to here, don't blame anybody else because you're the one that in all reality made that choice. Just understand that. I hope some of you get what I'm getting at here. Like, oh yeah, the powers that be, I tell you, like, yeah, smiled upon constantly. And it's just the way it is. But I'm totally open to all of this, you know, like, oh, there's not much that baffles me, but I feel it all too. It's these tuning rods in my back. What can I say?